Hey everyone, Old Tom Jin here with a sort of optional extra for our Star Wars RPG, our Raiders of the Lost Jedi campaign, that stemmed from a conversation that was had offline between one of the characters and one of the NPCs. And I wrote up a reply, the player and I worked out the conversation, what it would look like, but I realized after doing it that there was actually a lot of good information in there, which might be of interest to the other players and to any of you who are watching along. So I thought I'd make a little slideshow and kind of just talk through the story. So let's get into it. This happened during our second session. And if you've watched the second session, you know that while most of the group was off fighting the local wildlife, Laina was actually at a local sporting event with Lodik-Ahm, the NPC who originally hired the group back on Vergasso Station. And Lodik-Ahm was sort of calming down. I mean, he had just been shot at for the first time in his life, I think. And she was trying to get him to open up. So, she wanted to know about his relationship with Andro, his husband. So, where did you meet? What was the wedding like? All those sort of, basic questions you might ask anyone you're trying to get to know. Well, it took Lodik-Ahm a little while to calm down until he was comfortable enough with it, but he started to tell the story. And he said to her, "Oh, well, it wasn't much of an event. Oh, the wedding, I mean. We eloped. But that doesn't really tell you the whole story. Maybe I should start at the beginning. So, I was a starship mechanic for the Cronies royal family. You know that Andro was a prince, right? Well, I wasn't even the main one. I was just the guy working out of the summer palace on Delirium, just keeping the speeders in pleasure craft in working order in case one of them visited, which, by the way, none of them ever did. I didn't even see a member of the nobility for the first 6 months. It was just me and the staff in this huge empty palace. I guess I guess the royal family liked to keep sentients on hand instead of droids. I don't know why. Family preference. Maybe just showing off their wealth. Well, anyway, they hired me on after the previous guy died of very, very old age. I mean, he had been there for decades. So one day, we were all called in by the head of staff, and they told us that we needed to clean the whole palace, top to bottom. That one of the royal princes was going to come stay for a few weeks, and everybody was rolling their eyes, and they all obviously knew who it was. And I didn't think much of it. I mean, I usually keep the garage or kept the garage clean anyway, so what did I have to do special that I wasn't doing already? I didn't even show up for the prince's big arrival ceremony. I figured that was just for the house staff, and nobody would care about us grease monkeys. So I just kept to my work. Well, I didn't even think about it. I kind of even forgot that we had a guest, and I'm just going about my work, my duties. And well, a few days later, I was under this speeder, and I was actually replacing the converter core, and I had all the splines lined up in my hands to insert them into the housing. They have to be just right on those old T-47 speeders. And all of a sudden, somebody kicks me on the bottom of my foot, and the splines just go everywhere. I was so angry. I'm not confrontational, but I just shouted "Grak Brata" or something, and slid out from under the speeder and stood up, almost swinging. I was ready to fight. I was definitely ready to give this person a piece of my mind. And then there was this wall of muscle. Somebody just grabbed me in their hands and kind of shook me, and they're saying, "Who the hell are you?" And I'm saying, "Well, who the hell are you?" And we're shouting, and they keep yelling, "Where's Uli? What happened to Uli?" And it took me a minute before I realized that Uli was the old mechanic. So I told them that Uli had died, and then I saw the look on this man's face, and I realized, one, this was the prince, and two, he must have known Uli for years. And I was mortified. See, Andrew never cared much for his family, and he used to escape to the summer palace whenever things got bad. He loved to race and build speeders, and he would spend hours in that garage with Uli. And nobody had told him. He was heartbroken. So we talked and ended up spending the rest of the day fixing that speeder together. And well, that's how we met. He stayed for 3 months the first time. And then he came back 6 months after that, and then he basically moved into the summer palace. And of course, some of the staff weren't too happy about it. He was Androsian back then. You know, the whole idea of taking up with a servant and a Zabrak to boot. But then one day, one of the guards gave us some lip, and Andro decked him on the spot. And after that, there wasn't much comment from anyone. Still, we knew it would get back to the family sooner or later. And it felt strange for me to say I was his servant. So I told him I was going to have to go find another job. Something where I could at least make some sort of name for myself. Well, Andrew was furious. He wouldn't even speak to me for a week, I think. Well, one day he shows up and says he needs a speeder. He wants to go for a ride, get out of the palace. And, well, this is embarrassing, but I told him that, you can't. They're all under maintenance. Because, well, I had taken them all apart to spite him. So, of course, we got in a big fight, and then we made up, and then we had another fight, and I don't even remember how we got there, but at one point, he asked what it would take to get me to stay, and I said, sure, marry me. And then he just said, yes. And then I said yes, and then we just started laughing, and we jumped into the speeder and headed to the local magistrate, and boom, jumped to light speed, we're married. And that's when his family found out. Well, a few days later. I mean, Andrew was always the black sheep of the family. Well, sort of from the Black Bantha branch of the family, really, and, well, the more conservative aunts and uncles were apoplectic, I think the word is. It's not enough that you spoke out against the Clone Wars, Andrew. Now we have to go through some rural magistrate to find out that you're married to a horny grease monkey. I'm not actually joking. One of the great aunts called me a horny grease monkey. Well, Andrew had a few choice words and gestures for them, and then he hung up on the holo and laughed and told me not to worry. What are they going to do? He said. I think he really thought they would just let us live in the summer palace forever. And for a few weeks, they did. And then the Clone War ended, and the Empire was born, and, well, I guess the family worried that Andrew's father was going to pass away, and it became a whole succession drama. And that's when someone decided it was time to tie up loose ends. So we woke up one morning to the sound of shuttles landing and see troops spilling out into the courtyard. Now, luckily, at least some of the staff were loyal, and they locked the palace down and came straight to find us in our chambers. They told me that the guards had a warrant for my arrest on some ridiculous trumped-up charges, and they were supposed to put Andrew under house arrest until they could sort him out. So, of course, we knew right away we'd have to run. So we grabbed a few things, and including the orrery. Oh, I forgot to tell you about that. How Andrew found the orrery. That's an interesting story. So, hold on. Back to that week when we were fighting. Wait, no. That's not right. No, back up further. Back up to, well, Andrew's childhood. So, when Andrew was very little, he used to come to the summer palace with his mother. He gets a lot from her, I think. And she used to walk with him through the statuary hall. And they would look at the busts of his ancestors. And at some point, he started asking questions about who they were, what they did, what kind of people they were. So she got a copy of the family histories, and these are not light reading. There's maybe like 12 volumes. And they would sit in front of the statues and read the history of that ancestor. Now, one of his absolute favorites was Lantolin Kron. They called Lantolin the last scion, and the official story was that he was an adventurer, an explorer, who refused the throne in the name of love. I guess it's no surprise that Andrew loved that story. I think he felt a kinship to Lantolin somehow. I wish I had a holo of the statue to show you. Andrew and I used to spend a lot of time walking through that garden, and it looked so different from the others. Truly noble. I feel like the person that had that statue made must have had strong feelings about Lantolin. Oh, so anyway, years later, Andrew was, I think it was an assignment from one of his tutors. He was in the libraries of the Crown Palace on Chandar, and he finds a book, this alternate version of the royal family history. And in it, the author claims that Lantolin wasn't just an adventurer. He was a Jedi. The only Jedi in the whole history of the family. Now remember, at this time, this is even before the Clone Wars, the House of Kron is no friend to the Republic, and they aren't exactly receptive to the idea that one of their ancestors was a Jedi. So when Andro brought this book to his father and his uncle, they threw it straight into the fire, and then they beat him for his trouble. So he kept it under his cap after that. Until one day, when we're talking about Lantolin, he's retelling the Jedi legend, I asked him to look and see if a copy of the book might be in the Summer Palace. So we go looking in the library there, and we didn't find the book, but we did find a reference to the personal effects of Lantolin Kron. And they were stored right there in the vaults of the Summer Palace, this old vault that nobody had opened in centuries. And that is where we found the orrery. I actually think Andrew had hoped to find some definitive proof that Lantolin was a Jedi, and we figured maybe this thing held some clue, but neither of us knew anything about Jedi lore, so we took it out to examine it. We couldn't make any sense of it at the time. It was actually a couple years later that we paid a scholar in Ruria to take a look, and he was the one who said it might be a map to Lantolin's final resting place. I think that was based on the translation. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm skipping around too much. Recap. We got married. Andrew told off his family, and then guards came to arrest us and probably kill one or both of us. So we were throwing things in a bag. Andrew saw the orrery on a table and said, if they find out what that is, they'll destroy it. So we grabbed it, we jumped in a speeder, and ran. Went clear to the other side of the planet and paid for passage on the first tramp freighter off-world. And then, well, we left the cronies' mandate behind. Andrew had some private accounts that the family didn't know about. And that kept us going for a while. And, well, we decided we had just enough money to purchase a ship, and the Lost Legacy was cheap. And it's about the last thing the House of Kron would expect a rich prince to be flying around in. Or it was, until recently. You're probably wondering why we hired you, though, and why this thing with the orrery came up now. Well, over the years, Andrew's gotten into his head that if we could prove that the House of Kron had a Jedi in the family tree, that it would shake things up back home. I'm not so sure it's going to turn out the way he hopes, but I admit he knows a lot more about cronies politics than I do. His brother, King Robert, is pretty much in the Empire's back pocket. But there are others in the family. One of the aunts, I think, her branch of the family, who feel differently. Andor thinks he can pass it on to the right people. The nobles will call some kind of Congress. Like I said, their politics is complicated. Personally, I don't know. I feel like I have to know what happened to Lantulin. I can't get that statue out of my head. This feeling like his fate mirrors our fate somehow. I never paid much attention to the Jedi or the Force when I was younger, but now it's important to me. I don't know, I guess I can't really explain it. And okay, I'm hoping there'll be treasure at the end of whatever the orrery leads us to. I'll be honest with you, our funds aren't quite what they once were, and it's hard running salvage, running any sort of ship under the Empire, really. I was hoping we could settle down somewhere. Who knows, maybe open a shipwrights or a repair bay. Somewhere the Empire hasn't gotten to yet. Well, that's my story anyway. And so that is it. The story of Lantulin Kron, Lodik-Ahm, Andro, and the orrery. So I hope that's useful and informative. And who knows, maybe we'll do some more of these in the future if there's interest. All right. Thanks for watching and listening, and I will see you in the next session. Take care.